Our next two sections are going to be about how we group organisms. And the first thing we want to talk about is diagrams, how we actually can show the relationship between species. So the first is a cladogram. So if you notice, this is the dinosaurs, basically, and it is showing organisms that have similar traits kind of next to each other, and then showing a common ancestor. So showing that this branch is going to be a lot different than this branch. At some point, this group over here branched off from the original reptile that was around, and then there are different branches from each of those. So it's basically showing ancestral relationships between them. Okay, and there's different ways you can kind of do this. And so basically you're looking at those ancestral traits. What do they all have in common? So like for dinosaurs, um, they're things that are going to come from even before dinosaurs. Like what are the essential traits, like laying eggs and things like that. Derived traits are going to be one that came from your common ancestor and is very unique to your group. So for dinosaurs, large reptiles um, is the main thing, and then just special things about dinosaurs. So like the example here for birds. Since birds are land animals, they have special kind of eyes. They have lungs for land. They have toes and feet for land, um, and things like that. So those are all land features. And then the derived traits are things that are special to birds, like feathers and hollow bones. So that allows you to create what's called a phylogenetic tree. So it's going to show those evolutionary relationships. So if you were to look at these three species, you can say that all three of them came from a common ancestor, but species 2 and species 1 um, share this common ancestor. So species 2 and species 1 are more closely linked than species 1 and species 3, for example. Like we talked about in our last unit, this is showing basically as in time that it has been less time since these two species branched from each other than the next one. This is going to be a little bit more descriptive than the Linnaean system that we just talked about with the naming systems, because names will give you some information, but this is going to actually show that relationship in a visual way. Okay, so here's another one of the order Carnivore. So it's basically showing that they're all kind of going back to the same basic idea. They're ancestral traits, the order of being a carnivore, but then they kind of branch off into different branches there. And so these are all in the same order, but they have branched in different ways to end up in a bunch of different species. So each system, the phylogenetic system is going to be much more visual. It's going to show you those relationships. It's going to show evolution as a process more. And then that can just keep branching and branching and branching. It's a lot easier to change those and add branches when things change, as opposed to the Linnaean system, which is not very fluid. So as the species change, um, there's not really a method for how those names are going to change. But the phylogenetic system does not give a name to any species. That's the Linnaean system that gives the genus species name. Okay, so let's talk about the different kingdoms and domains that things fit into. So when Linnaeus first started, he pretty much put everything into two kingdoms. It was either a plant or an animal. Now we know that like a mushroom is neither plant nor animal, it's a fungi. So then there's a different kingdom. And then obviously once the microscope came along, we figured out that there are bacteria all over our bodies and in our mouths, and that there's protists in the water. So lots of microscopic things. So now we go with the six kingdom system. Obviously that can change if we discover new things. But for now, everything is put into six kingdoms. The protist kingdom, which is the sixth one, is kind of the junk drawer of kingdoms. There are lots of things that we don't understand, and we don't really know where to put them. So the protist kingdom is kind of like that extra. So there's a lot of things that don't really fit all the rules in that kingdom. They basically have to be a unicellular eukaryote in order to get in there, but sometimes they break those rules. Okay, so here's the 6 kingdoms. The 2 bacteria kingdoms, Eu meaning true bacteria, and Archaebacteria meaning ancient bacteria. They are the oldest. Then there's the protists, that are those unicellular organisms, but they have a nucleus. Then there's the fungi, animals, and plants. Okay, so the eubacteria are prokaryotes. They're unicellular, which means they're one cell big, and they are mainly heterotrophs, which means they have to eat. But some of them can actually do photosynthesis, which is what an autotroph is. And these are common bacteria, so like E. coli, which is in your stomach, in your gut, breaking down food for you. Streptococcus is actually all over your body. One strain of this gives you strep throat, but you have strep all over you. It's a very common bacteria. Here's just some pictures. This is a Staphylococcus bacteria that's going to make you have a staph infection. This really pretty one that looks like a pearl necklace, that's Streptococcus. That's going to give you strep throat. E. coli, other kinds of chain bacteria. Okay, the Archaebacteria gets their own kingdom because they do some weird stuff. They can live in extreme environments, like in hot sulfur vents. We have discovered them at the deepest depths of the ocean, in places where we didn't think life existed. But once we went down there, found out that they were living off of the heat from the inside of the earth in order to thrive. So they can live in crazy environments, and the word for these kind of bacteria are chemotrophs, which means they can actually digest chemicals for food. Like cyanide and other really harmful chemicals. There's some bacteria in really salty environments, like the Great Salt Lake, which just love living in super salty environments when nothing else can really live there. Okay, the protists. Most of them are going to be unicellular, although there are some that break that rule. They're going to have a nucleus. It can be heterotrophs or autotrophs, and they can move on their own. So this is a picture of a paramecium. You would find hundreds of these in a scoop of pond water. They're just everywhere. So here's just some more pictures of protists they're mainly microscopic, so you have to have that to see them. Probably one you're most familiar with is algae, and they live in these big colonies. Obviously, algae can form huge colonies in order to survive. Okay, the fungi, mainly decomposers. They're going to be heterotrophs. They have to eat. Multicellular, eukaryote. Their cell walls, though, that's very similar to plants. So they have a little bit of animal in them, and that they have to eat. And then they have a little bit of plant in them with that cell wall idea. And they usually can't move on their own. Their roots grow and things like that, but they can't like pick up and move somewhere. So these are the mushrooms, mold, yeast, which we really like, it helps us make bread and other yummy foods. So a lot of fungi are really good. Some of them are kind of bad. Here's an example, a couple different kinds of mushrooms. This one, the red one, being really bad for you. Don't eat that. Bright colors in nature usually means toxic, just so you know. Here's some mold growing, so those are all different kinds of fungi. All right, then there's the plants. So multicellular eukaryote, but they're going to be autotrophs, so they can do photosynthesis. They don't have to eat, and they have that cell wall, and they don't move. They can sway to and fro. They might follow the sun and things like that, but their root system is in the ground, and they're not going to pick up and walk or move anywhere. Okay, so there's different groups: the mosses, ferns, flowers, and trees. We're going to spend the whole unit just figuring plants out. So for now, that's what you got to know. So everything from a flower to a huge tree to a little fern. Plant. Okay, animals are going to be multicellular. We have cell walls, or no cell walls, unlike the plant. And then the heterotroph, meaning we have to eat, and we can move on our own accord. So everything from the insects to the birds to fish, all the way up to us. Okay? Lots of different kinds of animals in the kingdom. Animal kingdom is huge, mainly because of the insects and the arthropods. There's just a million different kinds of bugs. So there's a lot of different species in the animal kingdom, and we have not even identified them all. You'd have to spend a lot of time digging around a rainforest in order to find all the animal species. Okay, so here's the 6 kingdoms: Eubacteria, Archaebacteria, protists, fungi, plants, and animals. If you were to look at the number of species in each kingdom, notice here's the animal kingdom as far as the number of species in it, over 1 million. This little tiny sliver is the Monera, which is the 2 bacteria kingdoms combined. That number is growing by the day as we discover new bacteria. Protists, here's the plants and the fungi. So obviously the animal kingdom has a lot, but if you were to look at population size, the bacteria outnumber all species on Earth as far as how many there are. Okay, so people are in which kingdom? They're in the animal kingdom, so C is correct there. Algae is a protist, letter B. Ferns are plants, letter A. Mushrooms are in A, fungi. And E. coli is in Eubacteria. Okay, and now the question is, once everything is named and classified and grouped, how do we figure out what they are? Like, let's say you're going on a nature hike and you come across a plant with some berries on it and you want to know what it's called and if you can eat it. Well, what we use is called the dichotomous key, and basically that's a tool like a nature guide. If you've ever gone with a hiking nature book, those are dichotomous keys, and so you can use the features that you see to narrow it down to figure out their scientific name. Just recently, this little species was discovered, and he was named the Yoda worm, because you could see the resemblance. That's not its scientific name, just its common name. Okay, after that, the phylas are going to be broken down more. So, for example, in the animal kingdom, you can be a chordate, which is what we are, because we have a spinal cord, or there's annelids, which are our worms, like our earthworms, arthropods, which are insects, spiders, all the crustaceans are in arthropod, so your lobster and shrimp and everything. The Cnidaria are going to have stinging cells, and they are going to be like the jellyfish and hydra and anemones. Mollusca, they are like the clams and octopus and snails. They have bilateral symmetry, which means you can cut them down the middle and they're the same on either side. And the echinoderms, which are like the sea stars and the sea urchins, and they have spiny skin. And that is it for this unit.